Hey folks, it's Soul with another video. This one is going to be special because I'm going to demonstrate how to create content out of almost nothing. Today we're going to extract any and all impressions we can get about player housing based on the very short teaser we got last week. Now, I want to be very clear. We're not going to get facts or promises from some pre-rendered screenshots and video. You know, what we're seeing here is tantamount to like concept art. But we can hope to start forming an idea of what we can expect in the early days of this feature and a sample of Blizzard's vision of player housing these days. So if you don't mind, please like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me whenever I'm streaming. The two main scenes giving us the most details are right here, at the opening scene and when our elven warrior walks by their accomplishments. Thankfully, these shots provided by their press site let us look pretty closely at the details of what seems to be a one-room home, but there are a few extra observations to make. Maybe they're bugs, maybe they're more like the artist's vision than an actual working idea that the developers have planned, or maybe it's actual useful information. Let's start off with a whole inventory of the important objects we might be earning or crafting or might be given to us for furnishing our home. First off is the door, very exciting, and wooden flooring, even more exciting. Starting to the left, we have a skin rug. There's a bed that's oddly placed. It doesn't have its backboard against any wall, and then a few feet behind it is a trophy mount. Next to the bed is one of several lit candle stands we'll see, and maybe the reason this house will quickly burn down. It happens to be sitting on a plain rug, and as we move back towards the wall, we see two piles of books and a very, very tall bookshelf. As we start panning to the right, there's a broomstick, a picture on that back wall, and a stone fireplace with a wooden facade. Atop the fireplace is the stein used for the final shot of this teaser. There are a few vases and containers, and a tiny treasure chest. There's also a quill and ink, and more candles, which is kind of odd to have on top of a lit fireplace, but oh, whatever. Facing this fireplace is a more grand chair and a side table with a coaster. Further right is a continuation of the same wall panel, this time with a different painting and a wall shelf with books, and more candles, and something in the bottle. Kind of a nice touch seeing the candle wax dripping down onto what might be our personal bank, or maybe a treasure chest full of dead bodies, and next to that is a pile of wood. Going back to the right, after passing a support pillar, we have another panel with a Stormwind shield trophy, the adjacent wall with another shield and some weapons to watch over our meal. It's spread over across several plates with more candles to illuminate it. Holding this food is a very thick table that's apparently too low if the four surrounding chairs have anything to say about it. These sit on a larger version of the rug on the left, and that object right here, I'm not quite sure what that is really. Moving on to the second screenshot, starting from the left, there's a stone pedestal, one of two, which are holding Warcraft minis. Above the Night Elf mini is a curious chain that extends above. A dragon's head looms on that left-hand wall panel. It's sitting just above a tall, stylized wall trim that seems to run along the whole room, but it's easier to see here. There are more candle stands and one curiously large and unsafe candle sitting next to a spear-like weapon. The last wall panel is also a bit busy with a shield and weapons hung up, and leaning to the side, very appropriately, a Brewfest shield and stein. That's hanging out by another candle stand and a target dummy. Above the target dummy, but outside the shot, is likely a window allowing the moonlight to come in. Displayed on screen is a more organized list of all the known items placed in the room, and most of these are what I'm going to call common decors, and I'd like to think obtaining these is going to be very easy, like, they're easy to craft or buy off a furniture vendor, maybe they'll come from questing. Uncommon decors, I think, could include the paintings on the wall and the large candle, maybe the target dummy, especially if it's functional. I'm calling these uncommon because maybe these are a little bit harder to make or to obtain, and they give your place a bit of a unique flavor. Rare decors are, again, it's just a name, I'm just calling them rare, but under this header I'm including things from the past that we've earned, as in the weapons and shields and the Warcraft mini pedestals. And arguably the most epic thing here would be the dragon head. It's easy to take for granted the number of furnishings that go into what ends up being a pretty small, one-room cabin-like house. Okay, so I proved I have eyeballs, but now let's point out some less obvious details while reminding ourselves these are just concept shots and not promises of what's to come. One thing hard to notice here is that the items are much closer to the scale of our characters than most of what we see in World of Warcraft. Most of the game has expressed itself to us with exaggerated size of many objects. If you haven't already, really take a look around the city sometime and just look at how comically large some of these assets are. Even the art style of the furniture in these concept shots make it look like chairs are built with these massive chunks of wood. Art style is one thing, but it's another to put this into use in player-made housing that's, designed to feel immersive or at least reasonably convincing enough to be functional. This house here in Turgard Sound shows numerous examples of these exaggerations. Check out the size of this shelf and how this human can barely reach for stuff, and there's these vials that are, well, they're not really vial-sized at all. Or how about this shelf with lit candles we can't even safely reach, and oversized books, and a compass of this size, but, actually this chair is, kind of okay. From the teaser video, you can see the warrior, who's a blood elf by the way, reach across. They didn't have to climb up a ladder or anything to pick up this mug that fits in their hand, and it's on top of this fireplace, giving us an idea of the character's height if they were part of these pulled back shots. This right here is an approximation of what this character's size would be. Meanwhile, here's a human standing by that same fireplace in the live game. The point I'm making is we can probably expect player housing to have furniture and decor that are actually to size, and in my opinion it should. But there is a caveat. The presentation of player housing runs the risk of making the rest of the World of Warcraft feel really weird, or maybe silly, maybe a little bit less immersive. And I get why they kept this up for so long. It's not everyone, but I'm sure most people, they just walk right on by these things and don't stop to think about how everything just looks like a prop. And I'd hate to be that team if someone were to decide, okay, yeah, we need to resize 20 years of World of Warcraft to make it, feel more realistic. That's tantamount to changing the art style, and, oversized items has been part of WoW's identity. What we might see is a kind of conflict where players may feel differently, or maybe nothing at all. Maybe players don't mind if they live in a house that doesn't feel like it fits them. Maybe going forward, the size ratio of indoor environments will shrink a bit and players won't notice. I do wonder if this will end up being a very big talking point in player housing discussion. One thing to point out to calm folks, the two basic rugs here, they appear to be the same style but are different sizes. It'd be cool if, say, we could make a nice chair, but we could also make a version sized to our liking without having to create like separate small, medium, and large chairs that can just be chair, but we can toggle the size. But back to the house, the assets in here are mostly to scale with a normal person, which actually ends up meaning, hey, we can fit in more stuff than we otherwise could. The room size here is a good approximation to a basic floor plan that we'd find in other games with player housing. Of course, this is considering the size of a human or a blood elf, so my hopes are that basic housing will give just a little bit more room than this. Another detail to point out, this room seems to maybe have an upper level. It's not likely to have a second floor, but there is something going on up there. Notice again, the bookshelf extends really high up, bringing us back to that oversizing subject, and on the second picture, there's this chain that extends up. Again, this probably isn't a second floor, but we should have additional room to place maybe pictures and trophies and so on and so forth. It could be that one of those windows is a placement not visible on this shot, or of course, maybe just an effect made by the artist who rendered this concept. Speaking of lighting, there's quite a bit here, and I really hope this is a standard feature in player housing. It's presumably evening time in this concept with the place lit with a number of candles and mostly the fireplace, and there's no indication of overhead lighting, at least not from this shot. This one's a bit obvious, but we shouldn't deceive ourselves. It seems we may be able to freely place items. Chairs seem to have orientations that aren't completely aligned in a fixed position. There's a bit of an angle to them. Of course, this is also a bad example of this entire presentation, because clearly people can't sit in these chairs unless they're moved, so we can't tell if those chairs are going to be non-interactive props or if the chair will move if we sit on it. That would actually be pretty cool and something WoW's never done. But clearly some items are placed in odd positions, like the candle stands and piles of books and more. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to point out what might be a personal bank, which I'd agree would be reasonable and useful utility to have inside the house. The table with food could be utility too, given a food buff like a home-cooked meal or something. There are 5 examples of what I'm going to call trophies in this concept. The first being the mounted weapons and the shields, the second with the taxidermied heads, the third being the pedestals with the Warcraft minis, the fourth, oddly enough, the table with food on it, and the fifth being the paintings. This introduces a theory I have as to how they'll implement some of housing, notably these items where players may work towards making the base item, as in like the trophy, the pedestal, the mount, or the table, but then work towards unlocking different choices of what can be placed here. We can go all the way to the anniversary grounds in the live game to look at some of these different trophy mounts and creatures mounted on them. Using this as an example, I would need to put in the work to build each of these trophy mounts, but maybe achievements is all I need to select any of the different choices to display. It's basically like those statues in our garrisons. We put in the work, and then we can select what shows up based on the achievements earned. The dinner table can be a platform where we just place individual objects freely, but it could be another kind of trophy mount where we can offer a spread of snacks, maybe a candlelit dinner with steaks, or nothing at all because sometimes people sleep there, who knows. There's one more thing I want to point out that I found kind of odd, and it's these beams up here in this shot. Notice the beams here are lower than the beam in the middle. I'm not quite sure what to make out of it because I haven't found this in game, but this could be a flub from the artist who didn't size these wall panels consistently. I thought that it might have been a trick of the eyes and those panels are actually further back, but the wall trim here lines up exactly straight. It could be a kind of customization we can make to fill space with beams, or some sort of modular customization where we can place wall panels, and it turns out customizing the interior is a lot more freeform than we thought. Because consider this, I mentioned windows and lighting briefly. In World of Warcraft, when you see windows inside a building, you'll see windows outside for, consistency. And sometimes you can point out inconsistencies, which are bugs, but that's beside the point. Now, it could be what we're seeing here is an apartment with no other windows aside from towards the front where the door and the window was, which would be kind of weird because of the fireplace, but oh well. But what if we could add windows? Naturally, it would mean the house from the outside would need to have matching windows too. Not impossible to do, but it gets me thinking a lot about customization for both the inside and the outside. And that's all I got. If there are any details I missed, like I still don't know what the heck that thing on the side is, fill us over in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive with me, and if so, hit the like button, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.